welcome back. We have come to the end of today's edition of News and Views. And this last hour of the show has been sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. And we're not just leaving you, we're leaving you with a very, very interesting conversation which occurred last night. This is our sister show hosted by Inayet Wadee, and he had a really, really interesting panel discussion yesterday on his show Wednesday Nights with Inayet Wadee, which air from 7 right until 9 almost every Wednesday. And this week, yesterday, he had a really interesting panel, and the topic was big pharma crimes in Africa. And on that panel, he had Shabnam, Palesa, Mohamed. She's an activist, journalist, and lawyer, someone that's very, very well known here in the Salam media streets. And they also had Shukri Arnold, he's from SA VAERS ambassador, and also Rooksana. Reyazzudin, well, she's a big pharma survivor, and they had a really, really interesting conversation around the interactions of big pharma and African governments, and how sometimes big pharma in Africa is allowed to just do their business with impunity, even though it's not so, credible, and it's not for the interests of the people of the continent. So here's a soundbite or video clip from that discussion from yesterday. And if you would like to hear the whole interview, you can head out to our YouTube page and you can scroll down on the Wednesday Nights with Inayet Wadee section, and you'll be sure to find it there. But from myself, Shabnam, and the rest of the team, until we meet again, goodbye.
That is one of the most frustrating things, not just for myself. So I know a few friends as well that go to the public government hospital while I go to a private hospital. And I can't tell you whether the treatment is better or worse, except they seem to be getting the only difference with the government hospitals when they go for treatment is that they have to wait for longer days before they get to get their appointments or figure out what's wrong with them. But in the private sector, which I can speak about because that's where I've been in, the hospital that I went to is quite well known. And unfortunately, the doctors knew about it and they've denied it to my face. They've called other nurses, they've called other people to come to me and while I'm in bed and tell me that it's absolute nonsense. There is no such thing at all of any adverse effects, and they would still stand their grounds until I mentioned that, okay, you know what, it was becoming too exhausting fighting with them, especially me not being well. I told them, no problem. Now, from now onwards, I will just give y'all's number down to Shabnam Palesa, and you can find out whatever questions you want. But one of the doctors, he turned around and he told me that he took the vaccination and he's in the hospital. He's quite elderly. And he told me that he's never seen this. He's never heard of a case. He's never seen of a case with adverse effects. And I was quite upset because he really traumatized me quite badly in hospital. And what the nurses witnessed what he was doing. And a nurse did come forward and told me very disturbing facts about the hospital, which I'd rather not get into too much detail here right now. However, what I can say is that they were aware that there is adverse effects. There was nurses who's taken the vaccinations as they had to take it because they were frontline workers. They collapsed immediately. I have her details. We speak regularly, and she actually collapsed immediately. She was hospitalized the same day in her uniform, sent home. She gave me stories of 2 other nurses from the very same hospital that the exact similar things has happened, except one of them actually had to amputate her leg. She's not diabetic. They don't know what happened, why her leg just started rotting, and they had to amputate it. But the disappointing thing that really upsetted me with this hospital was they did not even let their nurses acknowledge or validate that it came from the vaccination. The nurses knew as well because 3 of them collapsed immediately taking it while they were just done with it. And they told them there was no such thing. So when I was in hospital, I helped them report their cases. They were not even aware. being nurses, I cannot understand why they didn't even know that you needed to report these cases. And then I realized, if I did not meet Shabnam back in 2022, there was quite a lot of information that I had no idea about. I didn't even know there was a no-fault compensation. Shabnam was the one who told me about that. I just wanted to get it out and get the validation, because without the validation at that time in my mind is I'm not getting the treatment that I needed, because now I'm going in with multiple symptoms. And as many of you all know, in our country, when you have medical aid, if you go in, say for example, for with abdominal pain, that's all they're going to check on. There's very rarely you get doctors that would listen to you where there's other issues and look into that. However, in our cases, we have overlapping issues. It's never, ever just one symptom. In this 3 years, I cannot tell you I've had a single day without a headache. 90% of the time they turn into migraines. But that's just not one symptom. I have GI issues, I have muscle issues, I have spinal issues, I have cognitive issues, I have neurological issues. And those are, I mean, basically it affected the central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So the entire brain function does not work properly, which is why I have multiple organ issues. But the lack of education from our government, like everybody says, when the vaccination came out, it was all over media, it was all over the news, it was everywhere. But why is no one talking or acknowledging about adverse effects? Here, these are professionals. I'm not talking about laymen or just anybody. These are doctors and nurses in a hospital who has no idea that there is such a thing as reporting, that it's important to report this. It's important, and they don't even know about the no compensation fund. Where is the government? Where is media? Where is everyone? Why is no one talking about this? We are not a few in the minority, because recently a lot of people that I talk about it, they would immediately tell me, you know, I've taken the vaccination and I'm fine. And I do not say anything because I can see and I know most of them personally. And I know their health hasn't been the same. So I keep quiet. And then my next question would be, how are you doing? How are you feeling? I'm like, no, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know why I'm so fatigued. I'm extra fatigued. Why am I getting the flu so often? Why am I getting so sick so often? People know something is not right, but they're not connecting the dots. And why are they not connecting the dots? Because there's not enough people talking about this. Our government has let us down. They did not come forward and give us the security of letting people know this is what's happening. So people like doctors, and that is something I find very strange, is why do doctors, and these are Muslim doctors, these are well-respected doctors I have looked up to, I have admired, I've known them from you know, with family going to them, and they know me for a few years even before getting ill. So they know how I used to be and how I am now, and they just tell me they don't know what's going on and what. But the minute we say the vaccination, it's immediate, full stop. Nobody wants to speak about it. Why?
Well, a very, very good question. Why? And perhaps we can ask Shukri, because, you know, Shukri obviously mentioned that he's got a number of members of his family that are obviously in the medical field. But also at the same time, Shukri, as Rooksana pointed out, and also Shabnam, the government, the role of government, the media as well, and also at the same time looking at religious figures, because we know in South Africa, we're not only looking at the Muslim community in particular, we know there has been this huge debate in the Muslim community, not only with the COVID-19 vaccine, but vaccinations in general, whether you should vaccinate or you should not vaccinate. That is, there are two schools of thought in the Muslim community as well. Certain Christian communities are anti-vaccine totally as well, which I am fully aware of as well. And just your thoughts, Shukri, because, you know, Rooksana speaks about the moment you raise this issue about the vaccine, and you basically hit a cul-de-sac or a dead end, and you can't go any further.
Look, I'm going to try and keep it as brief as possible, but I think the main issue that I seem to be noticing, although it's not being expressly mentioned is the fact that, as the word implies, they've been indoctrinated into Western medicine. So most of the medical professionals seem to think, I mean, Shabnam mentioned statins as an example, where if you turn that narrative, the way of thinking and the way of prescribing on its head, you actually realize it's more a case of medical professionals being pharmaceutical reps, in essence. The more pills they push, the better it is for them for their practice. They get better rebates and so on and so forth. So from a personal perspective, I've had discussions and I've had heated debates with close family members who are in the medical fraternity, who unfortunately, as Shabnam mentioned, it's normally a bad batch that affects those that have been adversely affected. And the majority of the medical professionals I've spoken to have said, oh, I've had two shots and a booster shot, and I'm 100% fine, and there's nothing wrong with me. You looking a lot better. And I'm like, it's really strange for somebody to be in my mind to tell me that I look and I feel better. So I think the biggest problem is the fact that it's either just blatant denial, or trying to avoid being held liable. Because I think if the scales of justice were applied in terms of you you actually put a weighting against the amount of media and broadcasting that was done to promote the vaccination, and on the flip side, it's completely, it doesn't make sense. So for every 10 hours of screen time you had for pro-vaccination, you got less than 10 seconds, if that, 2 seconds of what you need to do if you suffer an adverse event. So for me, it's a case of medical professionals, unfortunately, seem to be towing the line. It all impacts on their medical registration, their dealings with pharmaceutical companies. Government has a lot of medical professionals towing the line. Look, and I'm not going to paint or tar the entire medical community. There are a number of outstanding medical professionals who've actually stood up and tried to raise their voices, but unfortunately, they also drown in bureaucracy. So government looks at all the loopholes to keep dissent in the ranks to a bare minimum, and if anything, try and quell those voices of anger and of disdain towards what government has been promoting for so long. So I think the main issue we find now is the fact that, if you compare where we are now compared to three and a half years ago, with vaccinations kind of out of the picture, people aren't talking about vaccinations anymore. Not necessarily. I mean, there've been instances where they want to bring out newer vaccinations for other illnesses and potential epidemics, like you've mentioned. We've seen things happening across the continent of Africa. But because it's not in the headline news like it was before, with the countdowns that you had on the screens about people dying from COVID-19, and that we need to do our best to vaccinate and make sure the majority is you create a herd immunity. That's, that was the narrative then. But it seems as though the fallout from that is not important. The common threat is, oh, you know what, you're getting older, so that's probably why you're feeling these symptoms. It normally happens when you start turning 45, 50, you start having medical conditions that start cropping up. But a lot of these things suddenly cropped up for no apparent reason. So I think, we still need to, as much as certain and a very few people are trying to raise their voices within the medical fraternity, I think, unfortunately, it's towing I suppose you would say, both the government and the corporate line, because pharmaceuticals are in it to make, big pharma in it to make money. And unfortunately, it seems to be that two things that make the world go round in terms of, capitalism is war and death. So it doesn't pay to treat and save lives. It pays to create more death, because death seems to keep the dollar floating nice and high, so everybody else must suffer, because life is cheap, unfortunately. That's seems to be the general trend, both within government as well as with big pharma. So yeah, it's just something that we need to concentrate on and not stay silent and continue the fight. I think that's the most important thing.
We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed. More than 17 towers are down. Here, as you can see, the firefighters trying their best to help. The people are still under the rubble. A lot of the people.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments. Follow Salam Media on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.